This episode is sponsored by The Alcohol Experiment, a free 30-day challenge designed to interrupt your patterns, give you control, restore your health, and put you back in touch with the version of you who doesn't need alcohol to cope, relax, or enjoy life. More than 220,000 people have already tried The Alcohol Experiment for themselves and have seen improved sleep, increased happiness, reduced anxiety, and so much more. Join thousands in this inspiring, hopeful, and exciting program where you examine your beliefs and reconnect with the best version of you without ever feeling like you're missing out. Start today for free at alcoholexperiment.com.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Scott Pinyard, and I am the head coach of This Naked Mind, and I am back with another edition of Coaching Questions, this time with another incredible coach. It is Rob Wolman. How's it going, Rob?
It's going fantastic, Scott. So excited to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me on.
So Rob specializes in shifting your mindset. And I know, it's really funny for me in my own journey. I kind of heard those words before, but I didn't fully understand the power of it. Explain that to us a little bit. What exactly is a mindset and what does it mean to shift it?
Yeah, and I love what you just said about not understanding the power of it, because I think if you'd have said to me a couple of years ago, when I was in the throes of what was a really thorny alcohol problem, oh, just shift your mindset and you'll get out of it. Just change your thoughts. I would have said, yeah, right. I mean, no, I couldn't see that clear path. But by the same token, the paths that were being offered to me, they didn't make sense to me either. So when I boil it down to a simple phrase, and not that it's simple, I'll get to that in a second, but when I boil it down to a simple phrase, it would be your thoughts are powerful and you have power over your thoughts. A very simple phrase, but really profound. Again, now that I've started adopting a practice of really managing my thoughts, unbelievable the shifts in my life. We were just talking before we started recording about how far I've come in a really short amount of time. I mean, it's phenomenal. Now, I call it simple. It's simple, but it's not easy. And even though it's simple, I think it's complex. And I know that sounds completely contradictory.
I know exactly what you mean, though. It's
right,
totally fine.
Right. Yes, yeah. So there are multiple, in my experience and what I find, and I keep deepening this the more I practice with clients and such, that there are multiple pieces to mindset shift. So it's really useful to think of it on several levels, if you will. So it's that's one thing. And I'll also say that mindset shift is actually just one piece of the puzzle. There's other pieces of the puzzle when you're talking about how to confront an alcohol problem or any problem for that matter that you really find you want to shift in your life. So I like to make a distinction between content and structure. So for content, shifting mindset meant, we're so familiar with this work. If you're familiar with the Naked Mind work at all, going into each and every reason why you drank, for example.
Yeah.
And really looking at it and questioning it and getting, stepping back and getting curious about it and asking, what's this belief I'm carrying around? Where did it come from? Is it true? Is it absolutely true? And what happens if I would embrace a different thought, a different, way of looking at things? And then it's not just a question of embracing the thought, but then what actions can I take to kind of it's no accident that it's called the alcohol experiment. How can I experiment with this to bring me some more data to then maybe make some new interpretations? For example, I felt like alcohol was without question going to be part of my life for my entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, and even when I signed up, and I like to call myself the poster boy for the alcohol experiment because I took my last drink, I signed up for the very first live alcohol experiment, January 1st, 2019. That was my last drink. I mean, that's all it took, which kind of blows my mind because it's not necessarily everyone's story, but it was mine. So yeah, I mean, I was able to effectively shift my mindset. Now I just lost my train of thought.
That's all right. No, I was gonna ask you
Help me get back on.
about mindset that I find really interesting.
Yeah.
And that's like how pervasive it is, right? So you mentioned this idea that changing your thoughts can kind of change your life. And I think a lot of us, again, this is one of those things where we understand, okay, fine. If I think happy thoughts, I feel happy. If I think unhappy thoughts, I don't feel happy. But the reality of the situation is that with thinking those thoughts has way more of an impact on us than just how we feel in the moment. Right. So like it connects to our actions, it connects to our next thoughts. And that to me is what's so amazing about this idea.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm back on track now, but I even want to use this as a teachable moment, honestly, because there was a time in my life when what I did just there, like lose my train of thought, I would have spiraled into, oh my God, what is wrong with me? I'm so stupid. Blah, blah. There would have been a torrent of negative self-talk.
Yeah.
I've learned to manage things to the point where I'm kind of like, oh yeah, that's me. Sometimes I lose, I forget what I said 5 seconds ago sometimes. No big deal. Let's just move on. What I was trying to say was, even when I signed up for that alcohol experiment, I did it with the intention of getting back to normal drinking. In other words, I wasn't even open to the idea that I was going to give up drinking.
Right.
I just needed to get this problem under control. But because I was willing to listen to you and Annie say, your life could be a lot better without drinking. I didn't believe it at the time, but I believed it that much. And then I was willing to go on, to take that next step. 30 days. Okay, I can do 30 days. 30 days is done. Now I'm going to do 30 more. And as the year progressed, my alcohol-free mindset got stronger and stronger because I went in and looked at each of those pieces of content. I questioned all these beliefs I had about alcohol, why it should be part of my life, why I wanted to drink. Was it really giving me what I thought? Okay, so that's at the level of content. And I don't know if I'm answering the question you just asked, but come back to it because I kind of want to go on a roll here. So, so that's content, right? But then there's structure. Now, here's what I mean. Let's take the thought I used to have, which is I actually thought I was a better person when I was drinking. I actually thought like if I was going to socialize or if I was going to, I don't know, get on a call, phone call with a particular person, I better take a couple drinks first because I want to loosen up. I want to be funnier. I want to be more engaged. I want to be, whatever. Well, that's the thought. So we can look at the content and go, well, is that true? Is that really true? And what I learned when I explored that was I was getting feedback from people around me, like, actually, I mean, and sometimes I was loads of fun. I don't want to pretend that wasn't true.
Yeah.
But in general, it was like I was losing, like people felt distant. People felt like, I even had my best friend come to me and she said, I kind of miss the old Robbie. That's what people used to call me. Yeah. People that know me college, and I kind of miss the old you. And it was like, wow, okay. Content. Now, structure, and even structure has multiple levels. So sorry to be so complex, but it's complex.
Yeah.
Structurally, what am I doing? I'm looking outside of myself for something. Like the structural foundation on which the idea, oh, I need to drink to be better, is built on a structure that says, I don't have what it takes in here.
Yeah.
I need something outside of myself. And that is a pretty pervasive, and I'm not trying to get political or anything here, but in this culture, a lot of our, well, let me put it this, let me be specific. The alcohol industry is predicated on selling you that idea, the idea that you need this external thing. You need this thing outside yourself in order to be whatever, a better version of you, a sexier version, a more, that hilarious commercial, like, I am the most, the most fantastic man in the world.
What an interesting man.
The most interesting man in the world. Yeah. You don't see alcohol advertisements with people, puking in the gutter or even worse, having, just, drunk driven and now you're, being charged with homicide. That's not too interesting, but point being, like, and yet we're sold this idea, and it's been incredibly effective. It worked on me. I was like, I'm never going to go to a wedding and not drink. I'm never going to go to a concert and not drink. So I started to question the real structure of this idea that I need something outside of me to be a better me.
Yes.
Right. And so that just brings me to this idea, and we talked about, like, it's called locus of control, or sometimes I think of it as locus of validation. To the extent that I put it outside myself, you know, social science has shown that I feel less confident, actually, because I'm dependent on something else. I feel more anxious. I feel less in control. I think, you know, we might get into talking some about AA because it's an interesting topic, but one of the problems I had was when they said, you're powerless over alcohol. And yeah, when you're in the throes of being really, you know, I would say I was addicted, you know, but even short of that, a daily habit.
Yeah.
It can feel like you're powerless. But for me, bringing the power back was really important. So that's two ways of looking at structure. I want to say one more thing about it, but let me just stop there and say, you know, if you had a reaction or a thought.
No, I love that. And, you know, the idea of the idea of external versus internal validation is one thing that I see a lot of people get hung up on. You know, they get hung up on that because, as you point out, like, they don't control external validation. And a lot of people I talk to in our programs, it's like, I'll hear, you know, when we start digging into beliefs, I'll hear things like, I could never be good enough for my dad, right? Or I could never be smart enough for my mom. And it's amazing because you're looking at them putting the blame on themselves for something that they had zero control over.
Yes.
And I think recognizing that, and whatever the beliefs are that are, you know, that might be, you know, keeping us stuck, that's moving forward.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up those examples, because when I hear a client make a statement like that, I mean, that's the first step. The first step in this process is becoming aware. What are these things you're thinking? And notice the kind of effect they're having.
Yeah.
But I was never enough for my dad. Okay. That is what I end up calling, I like to call it like a blanket statement. I think what happens is when we're young, experiences, you know, take place. And we're too young to really understand or process, or we don't have the support. So we make sense out of it the best we can, and we put it in a drawer, and these things accumulate. The drawer gets full, and then we shut the drawer and we just label it with something like, I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Part of the work of mindset shift is opening up that drawer. Like, what does that mean? I'm not enough. First of all, actually, honestly, it doesn't mean a damn thing to me. Enough what? Are you not? Are we talking about physical looks? Are we talking about intelligence? Are we talking about emotion, you know, connection to emotion? Let's find out, because as long as you're just looking at what's labeled on the outside of the drawer, you have all permission to beat yourself up all day long over what?
Especially if it's vague. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But if you get specific, then we can start to question it. And typically when we start to question, it's like, well, actually, you know, if it's intelligence, well, actually, you know, I did pretty good in school, you know, or even just I navigated my way out of a difficult marriage or something. I mean, like you said, you know, I guess this was before we started rolling, but just our tendency to not give ourselves credit and appreciate the progress we made, and to really focus on the negative. And I do think there's a cognitive reason for that, but I mean, it's really common.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. I've got a few questions here. So we'll dive in. I grabbed these from questions that people write into us. I think, actually, I know, Rob, you'll have interesting things to say about all of them. So here is question number 1. I find that everyone around me drinks. My wife, my friends, and even my kids. It really gets me down. I am starting to feel like I'm going to lose all of this connection and camaraderie with them when I quit. How do people quit drinking among those who are continuing to drink?
Yeah, that's a great question. And oftentimes when we work with people, we have them kind of separate out the reasons why they drink into categories. And this is kind of falls in the category of society, in that, you know, again, back to the earlier conversation, it's so common. It's way more common. Well, let's put it this way. It's way more unusual to be a non-drinker than a drinker.
Yes.
Like, it's
right now. We're working on it.
we're working on it. And it's so gratifying to be part of it, like to have that level of backup now, to know that it's not, we're not just alone, and that we don't have to, and again, not to knock AA, but we don't have to be in a church basement and be really like anonymous, but rather it's okay now to say, this is what I'm doing. This is a healthy choice that I'm making. But it's the only healthy choice if you take veganism or gluten-free or, dropping sugar. This is the only one that you really have to explain as if you're the one with the problem.
Right.
You're the one making the healthy choice here. You're the one doing what's really good for you.
Yeah. I think that's an important point, though. That's a really important mindset point. Like so often what happens is, we phrase it in terms of I'm missing out, I'm not having fun, but like quite literally, it is the healthy choice to not drink. And there are very few other things. I like to make the point, like there's no other addictive substance that we have to excuse ourselves for not using. Like I have never and never plan to apologize for not using heroin, right? But like, yet we feel this. And so I think that's an important mindset thing, is to realize, wait a minute, not in a judgy way, like, oh, look at them being unhealthy, but more in a just, hey, I'm doing this thing for myself and it's actually a healthy choice. Sorry, I interrupted though. I just wanted to point that out.
No, that was great. I'm glad you did. And so we do feel this pressure, and we do, it's amazing how many ways alcohol has of kind of worming its way into our social life, our physical bodies, our chemistry, which is what makes it such a difficult thing to confront once you feel like you're in that place. So I have loads of fantastic memories of drinking with friends. But one of the things that helped me most with this mindset, shifting this mindset, was what you and Annie would say so often, which is it's the fun that's fun. It's not the alcohol. Now, I haven't run this down, but I have this suspicion, and maybe but I don't think alcohol does anything in our brains that our brains can't do for ourselves. In other words, like when it releases dopamine or serotonin or whatever, like those are all things that are in our brains already. It's just that it does it to this extreme extent.
Correct, yeah.
But not without a cost.
Yes.
Because what our bodies want is balance, want homeostasis. So sure, you'll get maybe that 20 minutes of euphoria or whatever, good feeling. But then, as we know, immediately after that, you start to taper into irritability, uncomfortableness, craving for more, which again, like I like to think of alcohol as the ultimate loan shark. It's like, I got some right here. You need it right now, but you're going to pay me later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I've found has been so gratifying is regaining that sense of balance. Like, no, of course, I can't on demand create that level of a dopamine hit that alcohol does. That's why alcohol is alcohol.
Yes.
But what I've cultivated is the ability to take back control of my dopamine dispensary, if you will, by getting back in touch with just what it feels like to have these simple pleasures, these good pleasures of connection, of feeling love, of being present, of feeling good about what's happening right here and now. Now it's easy for me to say now because I'm on the tail end of it. When you're, in the position that you're asking about, it can feel really uncomfortable. It can feel like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out on all the fun. Everyone's looking at me funny. Yeah. I have to explain myself, all these things.
Yeah.
And I've had those moments. I can remember the first dinner party that I had at my house where everyone was drinking but me. And I had this incredible kind of wave of like, oh,
Yeah.
But then, but the lie, if you will, like the thought that we can pick apart here is like, wait a minute, am I really not part of the group anymore? That's what I asked myself. And so then I looked and I went, well, people are talking to me. I'm laughing. I'm communicating. And in some ways I feel better than I would if I'm drinking, because I'm not anxious about drinking too much. I'm not worried about whether I'm going to get any sleep tonight. I'm not worried about if I'm going to forget what I just said, or making a fool out of myself, or my health. I'm calmer. I feel more at peace. And that makes me a better dinner partner. So and it's a little funny because, part of my perspective is having been on this journey for a while. And I know part of the question is like, well, how do I face this up front? But hopefully what I'm saying kind of would give you, assuming you were listening and you would ask this question, some hope.
Yeah.
Because I found that I so much prefer where I am now to where I was.
Yes.
And like, I can say that without hesitation or any deception. Like not drinking has become what I like to call an easeful choice for me. It's a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, why would I want to do that?
Yeah. Well, I think some of it too comes back to this idea of like, what do you control and what don't you control? Right. So like,
yeah.
this person who's going to be quitting drinking and is worried about that. One of the things I like to point out all the time is you cannot control how other people react to you.
Yes.
Right. And so if the conversation is, hey, if you're talking to your wife or your friends or your kids and you're saying, hey, I'm not going to drink. And maybe I'm not going to drink and I'd appreciate it. Like tonight, can we just not? If their answer to you is, to sit and spin, like that is not your fault. Right. And I think understanding that, and first of all, being grounded enough in self to be able to say, you know what, I need this. Right. And then secondly, to recognize when that response comes back, as long as you have done what you can to communicate from your heart in the best way that you can, if they come back to you with an answer you don't like, that's on them. And I think that so often what happens with this, like, what about my friends? What about my wife? What about my, drinking buddies, whatever it is? I think so often what happens with it is we get so worked up and we get so worried about things we can't control, literally cannot control, that we end up letting that stand in our way, right? We end up letting the idea that like, hey, things like, well, I don't want to make them drink alone, like that, from a very real, hey, I'm trying to change perspective, that is standing in your own way. And I'm not saying this to sort of beat someone down, but I'm saying it as sort of real talk of like seeing these thoughts and understanding them, and then working through them, like you're talking about, Rob. That's mindset, right? That is protecting your mindset and not being a victim to either alcohol or other people's beliefs, but instead being able to say, you know what, this is what I want, this is what I'm doing, and whatever comes up for you is what you can work on.
Yeah, I love that you said that, and two really great points in there. One being like, well, you talked about connecting. What I like to say to my clients is that you get to a point where this is between you and you, right? Because we have all kinds of influences and pressures, and like people pleasing is a really common feeling. A lot of us, of course, like we care about the people around us. We want them to be happy. We want to please them, but when it crosses a line, then you have to have that talk with yourself in the mirror and just say, this is between you and you. Like what, really connect with what your values are, with what you want your life to be.
I love that.
And then the next thing is, now how do I communicate this in a way that people around me get it? And I think you were talking about what would happen if they don't, and that's not happen.
Yeah.
But most of the time what I find is the people that are closest to you, they get it. I've told this story, I have this party that I go to every year up in New England, and my best friend is there. It's the one time every year we see each other. He's from Maine, by the way.
Oh, wow.
He's and we've had some amazingly crazy and wonderful times drinking, and we have, I don't want to pretend like that wasn't the case, but it got to, but the last time I went to that party, that was a freaking nightmare. I mean, it was just, it culminated in him, that's hard, him literally calling around rehabs in Vermont, wanting to drive me there right away.
Yeah.
And then in the end, he drove me to a hospital in Brattleboro. I'm just saying, like, it was one of the worst moments of my life. So he just came to visit me a couple of months ago, and it was great because, part of the real benefit of going alcohol free has been, I have a level of just emotional balance and enjoyment and clarity and calm that just makes everything, feel, I don't know. I'm enjoying my life a lot. What can I say? So I was so excited to have him visit. And I have, one thing that you need to cultivate as a sobriety coach is absolute neutrality on whether people drink or not. And it sounds weird. And of course I've got my opinions and I'll have my feelings, But you really, like, if you come across as trying to tell anybody what to do, like, I don't do that. I don't give advice. I don't, you know. So I sometimes, even to a default, I want to make sure that people know that if you want to drink, it's perfectly, you're fine. You know, I don't have any. And so I was like, you know, I even said, do you want me to pick you up a bottle of something? You know, when I go down to the grocery store, and he looked at me, he said, you know, I really would like to but I really would like to spend some alcohol-free time with you. And I was like, so touched. Like I felt, but he was being serious. Like he wanted to do that. And I mean, like they had some drinks at some point in the trip. It wasn't like, but the point was like, he came through with that level of support, and we did have an amazing night without drinking, you know? And so there's that piece, you know, that oftentimes, I guess what I'm saying, you know, and it could speak directly to this person. When you take the risk to be vulnerable, it could go not so well, but oftentimes it goes better than you think.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So let's do one more question, and then I want to get to our curveball question. Okay. I'm looking forward to this one. I made a list of them, and this is one that I'm like, I can't wait to ask someone. So enough pre-framing that. So let's talk about this one. This is another one that was written in. The question goes like this: can we talk about how many times I've tried to quit? Over and over, year after year. It's been a long line of day ones. I am so tired of this. How can I shake the feeling that trying this is just a waste of time? Now, Rob, I picked this one out for you specifically because I think this is 100% a mindset question. You know, this idea that the whole thing is a waste of time.
Yeah. So, and it is a great question because, well, I hear this question actually framed in a number of ways. Oftentimes, the way I hear it is this: I've got all the information. I've read This Naked Mind. I've listened to the podcast. I know it all. I'm still drinking. What the hell, you know? Why am I still? What's wrong? That's key. And we'll get to that in a second. Like that's where it goes. And again, I think that's we tend to blame ourselves. Another strong difference I have with AA, we tend to put more of the finger of blame on the drink than on the drinker. And I don't believe it's about having some character defect or some genetic predisposition. I mean, maybe, whatever. I mean, that's a whole other topic. But it can be super frustrating. And so this is why I said earlier on, changing your mindset is a piece, but it's not the only piece. So sometimes, like there's three aspects to changing a behavior or to adopting a behavior. There's motivation. So that has to do with mindset shift. And it's super important. Like it's what do they say? It's necessary, but not always sufficient. In other words, like you've got to do the mindset work. It's crucial. But there's also, so the second part of it though, it has to do with availability. And now we're talking, how easy is it for you to drink? What's your environment like? How can you set up your environment so that both it's harder to drink, but also there's other alternatives for you. So that you're, which brings you to the next part, which is the cue or the trigger. So what is it that, because it's always there, like anything you do happens because something, either you had a thought or something reminded you in your environment. So how can you set up your cues so that either they're different cues or you're putting in a new pattern where it's like, if this cue, then I'm going to do this different thing, not drink. I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to go post on the Naked Mind website, or I'm going to talk to a friend, or I'm going to, write down in my journal. All right. So I guess part of the thing there is that don't lose heart. Know that it is a super, I like to call quitting drinking climbing El Capitan level feat. It's no small feat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's estimated 15 million people in the United States alone that suffer from what they're calling alcohol use disorder. Like you can just look around and see how, or look at, all of our journeys. It took us time to get there, and that's okay. That's part of it. So, and that's why coaching is valuable, and not just coaching, but that's why it's valuable, since this is so complex, to reach for complex set of solutions, not just one. So that's my recommendation. And without really getting into specifics, I'm not sure what the next step should be. But the next piece has to do with what you said, like, what's wrong with me? Because one of the things that is most, I think, both freeing and radical about our approach is, like, we really emphasize letting yourself off the hook, like getting out of the cycle of shame and blame and guilt, right? And, you know, what it can sound completely contradictory for a naked mind coach, Annie in particular, who says, yeah, I quit drinking by not trying to quit drinking. Like, what is that?
Trying to quit.
Yeah. But what we're talking about, I mean, she was just talking about on our call, I think it was yesterday, like, those voices of shame and blame are so loud. It's like, boom, boom, you know, it makes it hard to do anything else other than hear that voice. And when we hear that voice, what happens? We feel anxious, we feel scared, we feel upset. And what do? We reach for, you know, I wrote this article called I'm Not an Alcoholic, but I sure used to drink like one. And it talks about how when I first, like, I went through a period in my journey when I did adopt the label. I was like, okay, I throw in the towel. I read this list, you know, there's all these lists. I am one. And I said, like, oh, whoopee. I went immediately to the liquor store. I did. Right. And it was like, oh, great. Well, you know, I mean, it didn't help. It didn't help. And that's why I refuse, and not as a matter of like argument, and not as a matter of like wanting to invalidate anyone who does choose to adopt that label, because if it works for you, fantastic. But literally, like, that's not who I am. I didn't want to adopt a label of this substance that was causing me so much grief. Why would I want to spend my life putting my identity in that basket?
Yeah. Why do I want to do that? Yeah.
Right.
You know, the biggest thing that comes up for me when I hear this question, and it's actually, I feel like we keep coming back to this point, but discounting your own experience. Like, every single day one that this person talks about, every single one of those is an attempt. That's effort, right? There's data in all of those. So not only are those data points, but this is the process, right? I know this sounds kind of circular, but the reality of the situation is, you know, we talk about this all the time, that it's not a straight line, right? From the day we think, you know what, I might want to do something about alcohol, to the day we're like, wow, I haven't thought about alcohol in 6 months. That is not a journey that, you know, is straight and clear for all of us. There are ups and downs and there are setbacks. And I think categorizing this whole thing and really thinking of it as a waste of time, that's gonna hold us back, right? Let me put it this way. If you were to talk about some sort of exercise, let's say you start lifting weights at the gym down the street, and when someone asks you about lifting weights, you say, oh man, it was amazing. Like, it was hard, but I just feel so much better. Or if your answer is, it sucks and it hurts, right? Which one of those are you going to be more likely, you know, if you're saying, which one of those is going to be more likely to get you out of bed of the gym the next day? It's going to be the positive one, right? And so every way that you're framing this for yourself, so we're framing this idea of, this is just a waste of time. I'm totally, you know, I'm not going to be able to change this. While those thoughts are there and they are real and we all have them, one of the things to understand and realize is that these thoughts are temporary, but that they also have an effect on you as you keep going. So take those day ones, look back over those day ones, and, you know, maybe there's something you can pull from it, right? Even if the thing you can pull from it is like, I'm glad, you know, if you, let's say, I had someone actually say this to me once. I was working with a client, and he was talking about how he had driven home drunk. And he had talked about how it wasn't the first time that he did it. And so I'm, you know, trying to pull this out of him, right? Because he's coming with, I'm so stupid, I'm so reckless, you know. And so in pulling this out and getting him to frame it in a way that, not that driving drunk is positive, but that, like, he's trying and he's moving forward, he eventually said, thank God I didn't get in an accident. Like, that's something I'm grateful for. I'm like, all right, that's good. That is a way to frame it. It doesn't necessarily excuse any behavior, but if the default thought over and over is, I suck, this is a waste of time, you're going to talk yourself out of quitting.
Yeah. I, I love that. And you know, again, two really good points jump out at me from what you just said. One is I love how you've helped point us in the direction of the importance of positive emotion and how it's positive emotion that create habit. And it's positive. I mean, all the reasons why you might want to stop drinking, that's important. Like it's important to focus on what you want to move away from, but I think even more important to appreciate and celebrate and feel grateful for the things that you're moving towards and generating that sense of positive emotion. And again, that's why I feel like this Naked Mind is so valuable, the group programs or having a coach, because one of the roles we play for each other is like, it's not just coach, it's cheerleader, right? It's like, yes, you know, let's celebrate this together. Celebration, I think, you know, is going to be one of the new frontiers of people realizing counter to what we are, again, we touched on a couple times, this tendency we have to focus on automatic negative thinking. It's so pervasive.
Yes.
What mindset shift is about is adopting a habit of automatic positive thinking. Right?
I like that.
Automatic positive thinking. Right? And it makes so much sense. And I also really like what you say about each part of the journey being important, even if it's finding the silver lining in drunk driving. Like I know that's a difficult example, but I like to use the metaphor of buzzer beaters, right? Like in basketball, we love them, right? There's 20 seconds or 0.5 seconds left or something, and they're down by 2, and they involve, and throw from half court, and it's like everybody goes wild. And sometimes in this path, when people think about mindset shift as a buzzer beater, it's like, when am I going to get it? When am I going to get to that point where it's like the lights come on? But here's the thing: every point that got scored in that game went towards the win. Like you had to score that point, that first point in quarter one, and that 38 point in quarter. Get into a habit of, but let's take a look. Like, how are we moving towards it? What did you learn? What, were you able to go, do 5 minutes of journaling before you decided to go, before you took that drink, whatever, because that's where you start to tip the scale in the other direction, to build up a momentum of someone who is making a new choice.
I love that. And that's a perfect place to leave that one. Rob, I want to ask you, this is a hotly contested question around my house. This is this episode's curveball question. Are you ready?
We'll find out, won't we?
Is a thumb a finger?
Yes.
All right, you heard it first. Thank you for being a good sport about that. I love asking these.
I don't think anyone calls it that. So what it reminds me of is just how Anais Nin said, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. So we all have this agreement that that's what, and again, in relation to mindset shift, if you think of it as if you think of thoughts as a cage, you want to get right up there and go like, oh, okay, one of the bars on my cage is this is a thumb. Does that work for me? Yeah, it works fine. But sometimes a lot of what's written on the bars doesn't work. And the thing about having a coach is like the answer on how to get out of the cage is written on the outside of the cage. Yeah. The coach is outside the cage. They can see it, right? Yeah. And that's, I have multiple coaches, so they see things that I can't. And that, again, is related to mindset shift in that, sometimes I think of it as a process of broadening your perspective, broadening your choice, so yeah, even the thumb question I can talk about.
All right. Well, Rob, thank you so much. This was awesome, as always. Totally. If people want to find out more about you, where can they go?
Yeah, well, my website is recoverfreedom.org, and you can go there. If you're interested in exploring one-on-one coaching, you can schedule a free discovery call, which is just a chance for us to get to know one another, for me to find out what you're looking for and explain what my program has to offer, see if it's a good fit. But even those calls, most people come away with some value, even if they don't choose, so it's kind of like a no-brainer. It's like a free session, but also, join my mailing list. And as I roll out programs and other, exciting things to announce, then you'll get to hear about them.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Rob. And thank you to everybody listening. I am Scott Pinyard. I will be back next month with another edition of Coaching Questions. Until then, take care.
Awesome. And thank you.
If you asked me about the one thing that makes This Naked Mind so different from anything else, I would have to say emotion. It's the emotion people feel when they're really ready to make a change, when they've had that mindset shift, when they've gone through all the materials and the methodology, and they get this feeling that they're never going to get to drink again. They let that go and they think, oh my gosh, I never have to drink again. That change in emotion. And honestly, according to all sorts of new research, it is emotion, especially positive emotion, more than anything else that predicates how long a change in our behavior will stick and how long it will last. It's emotion. And so when you feel excited about a change in your life, when you're thrilled you're making this new, different change, instead of feeling deprived or like you've been missing out, everything changes. And that's really what makes This Naked Mind stick for the long term. That's what makes it so different, is we focus on how you feel and truly change your emotion around drinking. And if that sounds interesting to you, I want you to check out our self-guided path at nakedmindpath.com. Enrollment in this program is closing on June 11th, so you don't want to miss it. It's closing now, and this is the path to changing your emotion and changing your feelings so that you can really, truly find freedom in your relationship with alcohol. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast as it helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.